NJ.com and the Star Ledger welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rutgers Rant, our Picks Pod edition, Washington at SHI Stadium, a really big college football game. Could be the first of, 9 in a row. Things go well. We're going to talk about that at length. We're also going to talk about Hoops Media Day, which was a thing, which was a scene, which was an event. I don't know. You guys have been there at these things before. Usually the number of players outnumber the number of media at Hoops Media Day. Not the case this time, Brian. You and I were there, Pat. You were doing football. But it was a scene. There were 30 of us, 30 media crowded around Ace Bailey. First time he talked. What were your impressions?
Yeah, listen, a lot more people than usual, a little different setup to kind of spread out the guys that are coming out. But every time Ace and Dylan were talking, everyone was crowded around them and hoping to hear from them. This is their first interviews as Rutgers athletes for both of them. First time most of the media got to question them. So we, went over some old territory. Why you committed to Rutgers? Why are you friends with Ace Bailey? What are your expectations for the season? Questions you've heard them answer 100 times. And they, took it pretty well. Dylan Harper, if there's one thing he picks up from his brother Ron, is he's an excellent speaker. Yes. He's already going to be one of the best media favorites as far as talking. He'll talk as long as you want, and he'll give you great insight, and he will not bullshit you. I was going to try to skirt around that, but he will not bullshit you. Someone asked him about if he's met Michael Jordan, and yes, because his father, in case people don't know, is Ron Harper, who played with the Bulls and knows Michael Jordan. They talked on the phone. And a follow-up question was, what is something Michael Jordan told you not to do? A lesson you learned from him of what not to do. And listen, there's a lot of material to work with there. But Dylan Harper essentially said, we didn't go that deep in the conversation. A lot of kids would have just made something up and just went with the punches. Yeah. He'll tell you what it is. So I think as far as media appearances goes, he was very successful in his first one. But the biggest thing that stuck out to me is just, felt like a Super Bowl media press conference. 30 people all kind of cornered around this guy. I think you wrote it right. Elbowing for position, getting their cameras out. It felt like an event.
Yeah, it was. It was funny. And Ace not as quite as comfortable, but he was fine. These kids have been around. They're teenagers. I get it. They're freshmen, but they've had microphones in their face from the time they're 13, 12. Dylan Harper, for crying out loud, entire life he's been around the media. That part of it, I'm not surprised. Get to watch some practice, Brian. I don't know. It was hard to judge on just one practice, but I kind of left the rack with the same feeling I've had a little bit about this team. Like, it just feels like a very high ceiling, low floor situation with this team. And, you watch those two play for a while and you just see how, it's just, obviously we know how good they are. There's no secrets there. And you look around the gym and there's more length, there's more depth, there's more speed, there's more talent. There's players hitting shots. There's everything going on, right? There's just you've got a bunch of stuff. You can see the potential of this team. That said, then you look at the center position. You try to puzzle out some lineups. Steve Peichel said something about he might play a small lineup with Ace Bailey at the 4 and Zach Martini at the 5, and then Zach Martini walks by. It looks like he's 6'6". There's like a lot of things that are just going through my head about that. Just there's things got to really pull together for this team to reach its potential. Is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. I'll believe the small ball lineup thing when I see it. I think Steve Peichel has made a lot of preseason promises over the years that ultimately were not kept for whatever reason. They were supposed to play really fast last year, and that clearly, because of a lack of talent, didn't work out. I think a couple things are clear. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper are the two most talented players on this team, and probably the two most talented Scarlet Knights of the 21st century at the very least. The team will be led by them and what they do. They will set the ceiling for this team. I should say they will set the floor for this team. The ceiling will be determined about the pieces around them. And I think outside of Jeremiah Williams, who Rutgers fans saw have a pretty good end to the season last year when he became eligible, there's just so many question marks. Right. I don't know how good the center position is going to be, to your point. And again, this is the third time I watched them practice. They had an 8-minute scrimmage, which is the only real action. And you can never tell big picture what happens in an 8-minute scrimmage. But the center position, you don't know what you're going to get out of that from Emmanuel Ogbole, who's filling some huge shoes with Cliff
Right.
O'More leaving,
Yeah.
right? I don't know about the shooting. PJ Hayes was impressive, and I really
Very
liked
much
his
so. Yep.
confidence, his personality, a little Cam Spencer-esque as far as just missing shots and just screaming and being upset with himself. Really reminded me of Cam Spencer. And his shooting is Cam Spencer-esque too. Really, really impressive. But I got to see him do it in a game. He's done it at every level he's been at so far. I have no reason to believe he won't do it again. But I got to see that in the game. I don't know. I don't know what Rutgers has in its supporting cast. And for Rutgers' sake, it really has to hope that those guys kind of elevate to the level of Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey.
Pat, you weren't there, but we've talked about PJ Hayes' tattoo, right? He's got Jordan on his arm, and it's just a fantastic tattoo. Turns out, and I didn't notice this, I don't know if it's new, Brian. Turns out he has an even better tattoo on his left forearm, right? Which is his mother riding a horse, wrangling steer in Minnesota. Brian, we were talking to him, and again, like I want to, like, it's so funny because I wanted to see his tattoo, the Jordan tattoo, in person. And as I'm walking up, I'm like, wait a minute, what's the other what is that? What's going on here? You talked to him about it though, right?
Yeah. His mother was, I believe, a 2-time or 3-time state champion in Minnesota. And I'm not quite sure what the sport is. It is some form of horse riding
Right.
with a lasso. I'm not very familiar, to be honest with you, but it is impressive. They're generational winners in the Hayes family. His mother was a state champion. His father played, I believe, Division III or Division II basketball. This is Pat Hayes the fourth. So I can only imagine what Pat Hayes the first and the second did as well before him. So the tattoos were really cool. And the Jordan one is an impressive piece of work. He shouted out his tattoo artist when I spoke to him, and he just continues to tell us that Michael Jordan is his idol and his favorite player. And I thought it was funny. He told me that before games, when he's kind of needing a pick-me-up, he takes out his phone, goes on YouTube, and watches Michael Jordan highlights to kind of get him into the mentality of playing. So, and I asked him just to kind of clarify, who is the greatest player of all time? He did not hesitate. He believes it's Michael Jordan. I didn't want to debate with him. We can have that discussion another
Wouldn't
day.
have been something if he said Kobe Bryant. I mean, what else could he say? He's got a tattoo. I mean, kind of like a.
Well, here's a great idea. You guys could set this up. Why don't you have Dylan Harper call Michael Jordan for PJ Hayes and put him on the phone? It'd be like the greatest team bonding moment of the season.
That's a great idea. And then to take it one step further, we can ask PJ Hayes what Michael Jordan told him not to be like.
Yes.
There was some weird shit happening. I mean, it is
a podcast of change. The podcast of change.
I kind of wrote it, but at least no one were addressing and proposed Ace Bailey. But there were some weird questions. Let's leave it at that.
And how weird was it? It was that when videos of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper's availability were posted, and the most talked about part of the interview, the first interview they've ever done as Scarlet Knights, was, what the F were those questions to start out the interview?
Yeah.
Everyone was talking about the questions.
Yeah.
And for the record, it was not me. It was not Steve. It was not anyone at NJ.com. For once, we're not the villains here.
Nope, we've asked some curveballs, but I asked a fastball. You see, did you hear my fastball to Steve Pikel, Pat? I get up there, get the microphone. I was like, "Are you having fun, Coach?" I was like, "Are you having fun?" Because I did see it. It's very funny, and I didn't notice this. And I'm just curious because this. Obviously, I tried to write about it. I tried to capture it. It's hard to capture, but this is an unprecedented challenge. This is a guy, and I really, he's like driven a mid-sized sedan his entire life. Now he's in a Maserati. It's just completely a basketball life of doing one thing when you're trying to meld together a team of underachievers. All of a sudden, you've got, 2 of the top 5 picks in the NBA draft. And I just, and it just looked like he was smiling out there. There was a moment in practice where, these guys were practicing free throws, and you can tell, they kept on missing them. And after all the entire offseason, he's talking about, we went to the portal looking for free throw shooters. Well, they sucked during the hour we watched practice. That's to hilarious. The point where you're like, I think they had Jerry Carino, of course, calculated it was like 63%. So it's not as bad as I thought it was. I thought they missed every single one for a while there. It wasn't quite that bad, but he's just kind of smiling and joking with them as they come up the floor. And are you having fun, Steve? I don't know. It is certainly a unique challenge for him, though. That's the one thing I came away from.
That's such a great column you wrote. And yeah, it's like that analogy of the mid-sized sedan to Maserati is so perfect. It's just really captures everything they're going through at the moment. Like, there's media hype, there's just unbelievable pressure to win. It's all coming to a head. So think that was a really nice way to put it. I will say at the practice that I was at over the summer, I watched Ace Bailey hit every single free throw that he took. So maybe it was just a moment or something.
It could be. Who knows?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Coaching them on the floor is going to be the easiest part. I could coach Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper to be good college basketball players. Managing everything around them is going to be a complete new frontier for Steve Peichel and this coaching staff. And just, you mentioned it in your column, both of them had their agents at the practice. I'm sure that was not the first time both of them have shown up for a practice. I'm sure they have many conversations behind the scenes. And these are just things that, Steve Peichel is used to having parents call in and say, why isn't my son playing more, and dealing with the normal annoyances of being a college head coach. It just comes with the territory. This is to a whole other level. And I'm not saying this is unique with these 5-star kids, but this is kind of the deal you make when you get that level of talent. There are a lot more people around them that kind of are involved, let's say. So how he manages that is going to be interesting. He mentioned the chemistry of the team is great right now because they're undefeated, which, that's a great line. I'm sure he's used it in many preseasons. It's going to be fascinating what it looks like if they go to Vegas and, for example, lose those 2 games against top 10 teams, and then they go to Ohio State and lose 3 games in a row. It's certainly possible. How will they manage the locker room in there and just the reaction, not only inside the locker room, but outside the locker room too? Just so many things are going to be fascinating to see how they handle all this stuff. A couple things quick things. When you asked that question about having fun, you were sitting right behind me. I thought the Sports Illustrated kid had come in and taken your seat and asked the question. And then I realized it was you. So, and good. On a more serious note, Tyson Acuff did not practice full contact. He broke his foot in the summer, but he told us that he's a few weeks away. Steve Peichel said they expect him to be back for the start of the season, and that he's actually ahead of schedule, which is a good sign. And I asked him, I thought this was a great line. I asked him about he was the guy at Eastern Michigan. You don't become the 7th leading scorer in the nation by taking a little shots. He took a lot of shots. He was the guy. He had a huge usage rate. And I asked him, now you're part of the rotation. You're part of a team. Just what's that adjustment going to be like? And he said, as I always say, it's always better to have 3 scorers than 1. So I think he's going to be a little relieved to have the wealth spread around and the responsibility spread around. So I think he's kind of mentally ready for the situation.
Well, that's a lot of those guys too. I mean, Zach Martini talked about it coming here. Part of that was going to be a different role, and it's going to be. I still think it's an open-ended question, like who's going to fill in that gaps around the 2 freshmen. Like if we tried to come up with a starting 5. You and I argued about it, which was kind of funny. I don't think there's any consensus who those guys are going to be. Jeremiah Williams certainly is one of them. Zach Martini, those are the 2 captains of this team, which is interesting. A mind-boggling stat, and I wish I could give credit to the whoever asked the question about it, but the most games played on this roster is Michael Davis, right? And that's amazing.
Yep. It was Eddie Kalegi of WRSU. He was the one that said in question.
Yeah. And think about that. I mean, and I looked it up, 31 games, but yeah, that's just Bole's played 80 minutes last season at center. I mean, all right. So is he your starter? Is Somerville ready for that? I don't think he's ready for that. Do you go for the small lineup? I don't know if that's going to work against Indiana, Illinois, Michigan State. It's kind of just a fascinating. There's a lot of questions. This is going to be really interesting to watch. That's why another thing I came away with. You
guys can tell me I'm wrong. I think the starting 5 to me is pretty clear. The question to me is the rotation around them and how they work in the parts. To me, the starting 5 is very clearly Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, Jeremiah Williams, Zach Martini, and Emmanuel Ogbole. I think, and the questionable one to me would be Zach Martini or PJ Hayes or whoever. I think Ogbole has to start at center because you're playing in the Big Ten. And
he starts at center, but is he going to play? How many minutes is he playing? I mean, it's not going to be the lineup on the floor at the end of the game, right?
I don't know. Do you need a defensive stop? I mean, he's their best defensive center. I just don't trust Lathan Somerville at this point in his career to be a defensive stopper. And we know that the staff values defense above all else. I don't know. I guess what would your rebuttal? What would you make the starting 5?
Well, I mean, he keeps on bringing it up, and the fact that he brings it up, and the fact that Steve Peichel seems high on the idea that he's going to Ace Bailey at the 4, which I wonder what he has his agent. I wonder what his agent would think about that. But banging around inside at the Big Ten, but Ace Bailey at the 4, going small, Zach Martini at the 5. I don't know if it's going to work, but then that frees you up to have Jeremiah Williams back there with Harper and Acuff. I mean, then you have, suddenly you have a really a lineup that can score, a lineup that can run. I don't know if that's your starting lineup, but the fact he mentions it, the fact he's thinking about it, and I know you're skeptical about small ball pikes, and I understand why, certainly given his history here, but it's interesting.
You got to play with the pieces that you have sometimes, if we've ever learned anything from Kirk Shiraka, right? Like, so it's a good point by both of you. You got the one side, as Brian's saying, the traditional Steve Peichel way, Politti's way of playing to the pieces. I tend to lean towards history and tradition that this is the defensive team and they're going to need that stopper in the middle. But, you got 2 months to figure it out, right?
Plenty of time. Absolutely.
Got plenty of time. So, and it's it's a great talking point in September for basketball.
Yep. Here's my last rebuttal. I'll make it quick. I think that your small ball lineup is the best offensive lineup by far. Spreads the floor with Ace Bailey and Zach Martini. It's great. I can only imagine Steve Peichel's reaction when they go down the floor on the other end and give up 2 easy dunks to the 7'2" center from Indiana, who will just look down at Zach Martini and just dunk over his head. I think Steve Peichel will immediately turn to his bench and get Emmanuel Ogbay on the court because he can't watch anymore.
Martini is a 6'8" Ivy League 6'8", which is he just walked in. I'm like, wait a minute, is that Zach Martini? I thought he was 6'8", and I admit, give me a ruler. But anyway,
playing center in the Ivy League is a little different than playing.
A little different, the smidge different. But he's a winner. And they're going to need him, and he's a great leader. You can tell already he's made an impact on that team, and they are lucky to have him. And all those guys, I think the upperclassmen certainly, and we talked a lot about the freshmen making the impression. Everyone they brought in made a great impression behind the microphone. Every one of them well-spoken, every one of them team players, said the right things. I mean, if you're looking for that, and that I don't know if it's fair to say that wasn't the case last year, but certainly it's the case this year. Like they get it. The guys they brought in, they are good pieces to this thing.
So, that's awesome. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. So
I don't think there will be any upsetting the apple cart as far as I think everyone kind of understands who the 2 guys are this year, and I don't think there's gonna be anybody saying, hey, why am I not playing more time? Dylan Harper has 35 minutes a game. What's the deal here, coach? I think everyone kind of understands what the deal is.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's move on to football since that's more pressing. The biggest game and Steve Peichel made a joke about it. This is the biggest game ever until the last game. Every week's the biggest game. He made kind of like a joke up there at the podium about it, which was good because we're guilty of doing that here in the media, which is understandable. Washington coming to SHI Stadium, and Rutgers is favored against the national runners-up. How about that? And I'm not even surprised, which makes it even funnier. But still, if I told you that, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, they'd be favored, you probably would not believe me. Tricky game for Washington, traveling to the East Coast for the first time. And then I didn't realize this until I looked at it. They return home to face Michigan, the team that beat them in the national championship game. So you would think that it's possibly a trap game. Pat, I mean, what do you think about this task for the Huskies here?
And then after Michigan, they travel to Iowa. It's a brutal 3-game stretch for Washington. Wow. So
welcome to the Big Ten.
Welcome to the Big Ten. They did get Northwestern. There they are coming off a win against Northwestern.
The one gift the Big Ten gave them. Yeah,
exactly. So, but brutal stretch. What stood out watching Washington a little bit? Obviously, there's so much newness to the team, right? There's all new transfers. All the big names from last year's team either went to the NFL or transferred elsewhere. But they still do have a really good system. And defensively, they do things that Rutgers hasn't seen. That was Greg Schiano's big takeaway, that Steven Belichick, the defensive coordinator, has really good schemes and can do things. And Rutgers is worried about how its offense stacks up against this Washington defense. So I was more surprised by the Virginia Tech line that Rutgers wasn't favored in that game than I am
really
in disbelief about this line. I think this is the right line. I thought Rutgers might have been favored against Virginia Tech. So I think everything's fair in this game. Obviously, I didn't talk about Washington's quarterback. Maybe Brian wants to hit on that part.
I looked up the stats and I was in disbelief. He has 1,000 passing yards through 4 games. I think there are
Really?
seasons
Wow.
where Rutgers quarterback didn't have 1,000 passing yards, which again is not a fair barometer. But he's not only prolific, he's very accurate. I think it was 75% of his passes were completed. I didn't do a deep dive in the numbers. I cannot imagine he's completing that high of a clip on deep balls and such, but clearly a guy who can get the ball where they need it to be. They have one wide receiver who Greg Schiano noted in his presser, and I remember his name because his name is Boston. It's kind of hard to forget a guy whose last name is Boston. He's their stud receiver, or one of their stud receivers. And to me, what sticks out defensively, they have 11 sacks through 4 games. Going to be a big challenge for a Rutgers offensive line who gave up 3 sacks against Virginia Tech after not giving up any in the first 2 games. That to me is going to be maybe the key challenge, both in protecting Ethan Kaliakmanis and in helping get a push in the run game and helping Kyle Monangai and Sam Brown have a bit of a bounce back game after, I wouldn't say a bad game at Virginia Tech, but not exactly to the level we've come to expect from them. And to the point about the line, I would say this might be kind of the mirror of what happened at Virginia Tech, right? Like, I think Virginia Tech got a little bit of respect because they're playing at home, and where I think Rutgers was the better team, but they were favored because they were home. I think Washington and Rutgers are probably a bit even matched, and Rutgers gets the points because they're playing at home. I'll leave it to you guys. I asked Pat this after the game in Virginia Tech. I don't know if he's changed his mind after thinking about this. This is the most hyped up, most exciting, going to be the best crowd at Rutgers at a home game since what?
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a great question. You would hope. I'm going to say, well, there were a couple of big crowds. Remember the night game against Nebraska? A lot of Nebraska fans come to that game. Night game against Iowa. I'm trying to think of like a comparable. What would last season's be?
There wasn't really.
I was on the spot in the moment, but to me, even I wrote this in the preseason. This has the feel. Friday night, national television. If you're not at the stadium, everyone across the country is going to get to see Rutgers for the first time in a really long time.
Yeah.
See the crowd, the blackout. I think it has all the elements of I take it back to that huge night win against Michigan, right? Like that one. The Gary Nova Penn State game where he threw 5 picks, like it has a lot of the makings of, and then on the surface, you can say this is the team that was playing for a freaking national championship last year.
Right. Yeah. If you don't come to this one,
exactly. So I think this has all the makings of being one of the biggest games. And to start a season 4-0, Rutgers hasn't done that since 2012. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Right.
And if you miss this one, like you said, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah. Jed Fish error in Washington beginning. And I think people I get it. They lost Michael Penix. They lost a lot of talent off that team. But based on what I saw against Northwestern, they still have pretty good skill players. Steven Belichick, that defense was aggressive. I mean, I don't know if you watch. My brain was like mush after the Rutgers Virginia Tech game, but I was watching it on the couch, and Northwestern returns a kickoff like 102 yards to the 1 yard line, and then they're like, oh well, here Northwestern's going to score. I mean, just this ineptitude on Northwestern's part, but also, I mean, just really good defensive game planning. Obviously, the younger Belichick, who started here as a little cross player, walk on. Greg Schiano talked about him glowingly this week. I mean, he's got a good defensive mind. That's sort of an interesting little wrinkle. I wonder if Bill will be wandering around SHI Stadium someplace in a hoodie. Go look for him, right?
Absolutely.
You hope he'd have his seats in the,
Yeah, and what's Bill Belichick is famous for taking away the best player on the field and making you do something else. That's what Virginia Tech did to Rutgers. It was so clear they sold out to stop the run. And Ethan Kaliakmanis in the passing attack made him pay for it. So I assume that Washington is going to try to do something similar. They're going to commit to stopping the run, but maybe they were a little more creative. They're able to adjust a little bit. That's the thing. I think the Virginia Tech defense never adjusted. Right. Like Brian did the great clip of the same exact play 8 times.
Yeah.
And you would think if we're seeing that in the press box, how is this amazing staff not coming up with that? So it's mind-blowing. But I do think Washington's going to be ready defensively, and it's actually conversely seems like the strength of their team.
Right. All right. So we talked about Washington. Let's go deep here in our weekly segment. Know your opponent. As always, I've dug in, found some fascinating stuff about the University of Washington program. First time Rutgers is facing them as Big Ten opponents, although they had that series in the Ash era where I slept my ass out to Seattle thinking, oh, we're going to see something exciting and different. And they got absolutely shellacked out there. It was something. Got a nice meal in Seattle, though. Got some sushi, I think. All right. So here, know your opponent. I'm going to give you 3 questions, multiple choice. Let's see how you do. Now, you know I love the mascot stuff. So the first one, here we go. Washington's mascot, as you know, is a husky. But before the Huskies in the early 1920s, there was another mascot for the Washington football team. What was it? A Kraken named Carl, which is where the current Seattle NHL team got the inspiration for its mascot. B, Hank the Halibut, which was tossed around the stadium in the tradition of the Seattle Fish Market. C, a bird native to the Seattle area called the marbled murrelet, which was replaced when it went extinct. Or D, a 3.5-foot tall gold-plated wooden statue named Sonny Boy that disappeared in 1923 and was eventually found in the garden of a South Bend, Indiana family nearly a quarter of a century later. What do you guys got?
I got D, Golden Boy. That's some stuff right there. Golden Boy.
These are all so absurd. I'm going to take the one that's the least absurd, which is the Kraken, because like you said, they actually named another team in the city a Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go with A. Okay.
Pat's right. It is Golden Boy. Yes. Is that fantastic or what? So they had this thing. I read the story. I was just transferred. I just love this crap. So they had this thing. You gotta look at it, a picture. Google Golden Boy, 3.5-foot tall wooden gold painted statue of this. I explains it in like some newspaper had a guy with he's standing in front of columns, and they brought it to games, and then they lost it somehow. And then tried to find it. It turns up in some guy's garden because they played Notre Dame and they brought it with them. And I guess they left it there. And so some guy found it and put it in his garden. He thought about throwing it in the fireplace, but they were looking for Golden Boy. And the guy's like, oh, wait a minute. That sounds a lot like the thing I've got out in my roses. They found it. They gave it back to Washington. I mean, isn't that not? And then that's some crazy stuff.
Love it.
Crazy shit,
that's
right?
that's some stuff. That's all.
That's
I can
some stuff, right? That is some stuff. You can't.
Where is Golden Boy now? Where do they have him now? He got to be in a museum or something, right?
You would think they wouldn't we wouldn't bring it on the road again. And then they're going to bring Golden Boy with them.
Right.
They will bring the mascot. What do you know what the Husky mascot's name is?
I don't. Let me look it up. Give me some guesses. I'll look it up right now. What do you guys think?
I know what it is.
You do?
Yeah.
Harold?
Oh,
it's Harry. You're correct. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah,
second question. This is good. So Washington established the Huskies as the official mascot in 1922, starting a tradition of appointing a live dog to the position. How many dogs have held that position? A, 8, B, 14, C, 21, or D, 102?
Oh.
How many dogs? How many official?
I'll go C.
You go 21? Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right. C. I'm going to go C as well.
Oh, it's 14. Yeah, they must appoint them as puppies. Yeah, this is the 14th. I forget his name. Dubs the second is his name. I looked it up too. All right, you're both wrong that time. All right, number 3, final question. Warren Moon is a Hall of Fame quarterback who played at Washington, but he is not the university's all-time passing leader. He is 16th.
Wow.
Who is number 1? A, Mark Brunell, the former Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback. B, Michael Penix Jr., the star of its most recent team. C, Jake Browning, the current Bengals backup. Or D, Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks.
C. It's
wow. C. Wow. He's so confident.
It's C. It's got to be C.
It's Jake Browning. That was C. Jake Browning was C.
Yeah.
What was A again?
Mark Brunell.
It's not Penix. I'll go Brunell to be different.
No, you were wrong. He was confident. You should have just taken it. You could ask. It is Jake Browning, current Bengals backup. There you go. Good job. Well played today. That was 2 easy. Oh. You went 0-3 last week. Got the first 2 questions wrong here. Now you're gonna. It's too easy.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I thought
It made up for the fact that Golden Boy was impossible. That was an impossible
What do
question.
you mean it was impossible? How could I make that up?
I don't think you made it up. I'm just saying it's something I would never have looked up. I guess that's the whole point of this trivia thing. It's stuff that I would have no idea what.
If you knew the answer to the trivia,
Fair
what
point.
is that?
Fair point. I'm sorry that this is 2 weeks, 3 weeks we've been doing this, and this is
you're
the
just
second time I'm
terrible.
complaining about your questions.
I will
Complaining
say,
about my questions.
I'm pretty sure that I voted for Michael Penix to be the Heisman Trophy winner last year as my number 1 pick. He would have been my golden boy. He deserved it
I think
over
I did
Jaden
too.
Daniels. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, I'm pretty sure I did too. I didn't think I left Jaden Daniels off my ballot, and people flipped out over that. Probably, rightly so. Okay, let's dive into some questions. We only got a few here, but we had some readers leftover questions. Crowd over under 45,000 butts in the seat for the game. Joe wants to know. We talked about it a little bit. So that's interesting because they're going to announce close to a sellout. I have heard that they are. In traditional fashion, airdropping scads of tickets over Piscataway High School. I mean, I don't know what do we sense? Is it going to be like a really, real sellout?
I think so. I really do. I think there's a lot of optimism for the team. I think the Friday night appeal is special. People want to come to something special like that. So I do think I'm going to say over.
So it would have to be 10,000 less people than the capacity, right? Or at least in the record crowd against Penn State a couple years ago. It'd have to be 10,000 empty seats.
That was fiction, though. The record crowd is just the.
I mean, they're all fiction, but anyway.
But that is Golden Boy level crazy. That's truth, I guess. Well, you know what I'm talking about. That is. Yeah.
Well, okay, sure. But the capacity is what, 52,000, right? So that would mean 7,000 empty seats. I think anything less than 50, truthfully, would be a massive disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say over, and I'll put some faith in the Rutgers faithful. But listen, I would not be surprised if it's 42.
Yeah, no, I think it's gonna be a good crowd too. I think it's gonna be over. Have they not announced the sellout yet as of Wednesday at 10:47? Interesting.
They've pivoted very hard from 2022, where every game was essentially a sellout, and as you mentioned with the Penn State record crowd sellout, the word fugazi probably fits in this scenario.
But not Fugazi. We know that.
But not Fugazi. I think this year they're being maybe a little bit more cautious, or maybe it's not sold out.
Right.
I'm not quite sure.
I did hear a radio ad on WFAN while I was driving this morning, saying "Come out for the blackout." This is Coach Schiano. It was good. It was a good commercial. Okay. Interestingly enough, I asked Coach Schiano in his press conference, "Hey, do you have any idea if this is trending towards a sellout?" Of course, his answer was, "It's not really my purview." Come on, this guy knows everything about this freaking program.
Kidding me? Yes. Yeah. He knows the answer to that question, as he does to every question you ask him that he doesn't answer.
Yes.
I will say people might be more inclined to show up because they have listened to fans' complaints and changed the new bag policy. The first couple of games, they only let you come in with a bag on certain gates, and that led to some disastrously long lines. They have since changed the plan, and now every gate lets you come in with a bag. I do wonder, though, if they're still going to be as strict with the bags as they are, which my question, whenever I read complaints about this stuff, is always, why do people bring in a bag if it's such a hassle? Just go to the game without a bag. Like, what? I know I'm becoming the guy who just rags on fans, but I just don't get it. Why do you need a bag? What do you need to bring in your bag? I don't get it.
Maybe if you're super Somerset, you have to bring your canes after your double knee trend. You can carry that with you.
All right, you can guilt trip me with this forever, but if the cane does not go in a bag, we all know
the population carries a purse. That's another aspect.
But do they need a purse? Do you need a purse? Do you like? What do you need?
I don't.
Right. Well, the omnipresent you. I just like you can pay. Like, listen, I know paying $18 for a beer is a real pain in the butt. I get it, but like, just don't bring a bag. You can get into the stadium a lot easier without a bag.
Point well taken. Point well taken. All right. Another question: how does the short week impact Washington coming coast to coast? Yeah, I think it does. I think it's the first time is interesting. I'm not the first time coming to the East Coast. I get it, but I mean, the newness of the trip, the Big Ten, the fact that it's happening on a short week, I think it's a far bigger disadvantage to Rutgers than when Rutgers travels out to the West Coast for the first. I don't know. This is just my take on it. I could be wrong. You guys agree that that could be a big impact here?
the short week is I throw out the travel to be honest. I think teams in this day and age are so adjusted and accustomed to the travel that I think
That's
it's kind
fair.
of it's an overrated aspect of the game. But I think the short week is realistic because you come off a game Saturday, you're already onto focusing on your next opponent Sunday. All your practices are moved up. The intensity of your practices have to be de-escalated. So I think it's more about the short week, and it impacts both teams equally. I know just from listening to Greg Schiano, he did not hype up Washington as much as he hyped up Virginia Tech. And I think that's because he did not have as great of a scouting report at the time as he did when he had extra days to prepare for Virginia Tech. My opinion, I could be completely wrong, but that was my sense.
My take on that was that he thinks Washington is the best team they've played, right? He made Akron and Howard sound like Ohio State and Michigan, and Virginia Tech a little less so.
Interesting.
Maybe Washington, he actually thinks they're very good,
Interesting.
so he doesn't want to
Yes.
hype them up as much as the others.
That's
Interesting.
some next level Shianoology there. I like it. I'm going to go with that theory too. That's good. Yeah. 3-dimensional chess, baby. All right. This is a good question because I think it's going to matter in this game. Did Ethan call an audible to change his own passing plays? Is Ethan calling? He wants to know if Ethan has the ability to change plays at the line of scrimmage. Another breeder wanted to know earlier in the week. We're still looking over to the side, even with the headset. That's something that just becomes, it's, why do they have that if you have electronics now? Do you guys have any insight into what's going on with audibling and with the electronic headset stuff?
Great question. I don't, but I know the signaling is a lot for other positions, right? It's not just the quarterback. It's for
that's good, interesting.
Right, like the receivers are looking at the signals, and because the quarterback only has 15 seconds in the helmet communication,
right,
cuts out. So I know Ethan's probably still getting some signs from the sideline as well. It's but so the signaling definitely still exists. Obviously, you see it. So as far as him audibling, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to.
I think he must. Right.
I would imagine you're a Big Ten level quarterback who's experienced, not just right. And he's not a first year quarterback out there. So I would think he would have the ability.
All right, a couple more questions. Here's an interesting one. Run the table. And I love hypotheticals. Unlike coaches, I'm a big hypothetical fan. In your opinion, does Rutgers football have more of a chance running the table or losing the rest of the games? I think it is equally a chance of Kamala Harris winning Alabama. Like, I think it's below 0.1% on either direction. Or if you're Donald Trump winning California, if you want to do the other way. But if I had to go one way, it's funny. If I had to go one way, I think it's probably more of a chance of losing the games because if Ethan gets hurt in the first quarter of that game, injuries. I have a hard time imagining them running the table. Fellas, what do you think?
Yeah,
Brian's dismissing this question.
Yeah,
there's 9 games.
It was an interesting question. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't think it's uninteresting. I guess. I don't know. I guess it's equally likely. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends if they can beat USC. That to me is the only real major question. I think they can beat every other team on the schedule. But I just think almost no team, no matter how good you are, run the table.
Of course, right. If you toss a coin 9 times, it could come up tails once. It's just the odds are very difficult, even in even games.
Look at the Virginia Tech game. That game could have gone either way. And that's going to happen 9 more times the rest of the year.
9 more times. Exactly. All right. One more question, and then we'll do our picks. Does anyone but myself think Sam Brown is a better running back than Kyle Monungai? Frank from Hillsborough. Yeah, I'm not there yet. I think Sam Brown's a good running back, a different running back. I think the fact they have 2 running backs is huge, but better. One game's not going to tilt me there.
Yeah, it's all about sample size, and Kyle Monungai's proven it. He can do it for a season, even against good defenses like Ohio State last year. He had 135 yards against Ohio State. So Sam Brown, great running back. Monungai has the explosiveness and the ability to get to the next level, I think, is a little bit better than Brown. Brown's just a big bulldozing type running back that can still move with some shiftiness. But Monungai has every attribute you want in a running back to me. So I would take Monungai.
I think you nailed it with the word different.
Yeah.
He's a different running back. I agree with Pat. Different skill set. If I had to take one of them, I'd take Monungai.
Yeah, agreed. All right, good job with the questions. Let's do our picks, and I got to start with this, Brian. So, a friend of the pod, someone you know well, with time on his hands, apparently, went back and looked at your current streak here of picking the winner of the game correctly all of last season and the first 3 games this year. And I think you made a passing comment. Oh man, if I had bet on this, right? Last podcast, you made this passing comment about, whoa, what could it be? And we laughed. Well, this loyal listener did the math. So if you put $100 on each game based on the odds, what do you think? And took that money and reinvested the next game. You didn't collect any winnings. You didn't collect any winnings. You pushed.
Yeah.
You rode the hot
exponential.
How much money do you think that $100 would be right now based on your 15 in a row streak?
Let's go. The thing is, Rutgers didn't get any upsets in this stretch, right? So it's not like they were like plus 500 money line at any point here. And we're going money line, or we're going money line, right? Not against the spread.
Money line, yes. And there are a couple of no lines in there. Like Wagner was a no line. Howard was a no line.
Right. I'll go 5,000.
That was what it was last. You would be up to $12,658.20 if you had just taken that $100. It's pretty good, yeah. Because you $100 100 goes against Northwestern goes to 143, 188, makes a big jump when you. The Miami one is the biggest jump because I think it was Rutgers minus 125. You made a jump there, and it just kept on going, baby.
And you're playing with 10 times there in the Miami.
Yeah. And then it was one. That's right. And it was 140. That was the only plus game the Rutgers won was last week. Plus 140. So you would have gone from 5,200 to 12,000.
And the games Rutgers, playing Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, right? You're not making any money on those games. Because,
no, right. If you had $748 on Ohio State to beat Rutgers, you came away with $806.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting though. Still,
a lot of that's a lot of money.
This is why we're not allowed. This is why we can't bet on Rutgers in New Jersey. We should be breaking the bank. Yeah, taking the bank. The sports betting would be closed.
Yeah. Thanks to this loyal listener for making the gambler's remorse I have constantly just even higher. I feel like I could have retired from my job if I had just driven down to Parks and dropped $1,000 on every Rutgers game.
Yeah. Thank goodness we don't do that. All right. Picks. I have no idea. Like I'd like you guys to go first so I could formulate it. What line are we going with? 3.5?
2.5.
2.5 now. Okay.
It opened at 3.5. It's dropped since in most books at 2.5. And I like that number more too. It makes it a lot more, most teams are going to win by 4, but 3 is a very possibly a winning margin here. So, let's go 2.5.
Okay. Got it.
Do you want me to go first? Because I
do. Yes, that would be nice.
Clubhouse leader.
You do it.
Well, I'm in the same boat as you. I have no effing idea who's going to win this game. I really have no idea. Here's the question I've asked myself a lot. When is the last time Rutgers won a game like this? National attention, big spotlight, sold out stadium, high expectations. Nebraska game, 22, loss. Iowa game, 22, loss. 2014 Penn State, loss. Louisville 2012, loss.
When was the last time they were favored in one of those games is the next question.
They're favored by 2.5. It's essentially a pick 'em.
Well, I hear you. Yeah, but we can't say that. And beat Penn State. Well, like if we took you going, how far back you go in Penn State? You going back to that
2014,
2014 game? I think they were favored in that game, weren't they?
Probably. I don't remember.
Right,
I was
right. You would
18,
think.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Here's my point. Nebraska in 2022 stunk. Rutgers could have beaten Nebraska in 2022. And in a way, the last major Friday night home game they had against Nebraska was the catalyst of bringing Kirk Shiraka back because that was the game that got Sean Gleason fired. Anyway, I'm just stalling here, essentially, because to this point, I still have not picked who I think is going to win. I think Rutgers will break the long streak of not coming up and rising up to the moment. Rutgers has needed a signature win for quite some time. I asked Greg Schiano about that a couple times in 2022 and last year. I think Rutgers needs a signature win. And while Washington is not ranked and they're not exactly the team they were last year, they're still the national runners-up coming to your place at a hyped national television game in front of a full crowd. If they win, it's a signature win. I think Rutgers gets a signature win. I'll take Rutgers 27, Washington 24, last second field goal from Jay Patel to win it.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Good prediction.
Pat?
Good pick. See, I see this as a defensive game. I think this is going to be a low scoring, a lot of punting, field position. Rutgers plays off the crowd, maybe gets a turnover that sways things. But I think it's very much Rutgers is going to try to counterbalance Will Rogers by keeping him off the field. I think, you got to play big time defense. You got to run the ball well. And I think that's going to lead to a more physical, low scoring game. And I like Washington's defense a lot. I do. So I do think Rutgers pulls this game out with everything on its side, the home field advantage, the special season brewing. I think this is the one that I know, Steve, you wrote that last week's win could be the springboard for a special season. I've always looked at this one as the springboard for a special season, right? You have the huge environment, national television, maybe get a couple votes in the AP poll. Wink, wink, Brian. So I think Rutgers pulls out this low scoring game. I'm going to go 20-17.
Okay. So this is fascinating because, my instinct says this is an opportunity to catch. I'm already one game in the hole against Brian to catch him. Now he's making this stab, but I don't know. I think Rutgers is going to win. It's too early in the season to start going for points. What do they say? What's the expression? Going tilt here to get
chasing
the
the points.
Chasing the points. Thank you. So I'm going to go with the Scarlet Knights. I think they're just better until proven otherwise. I think they're better than Washington. Wow. Imagine saying that a couple of years ago. I think it's going to be easier than we think. They're going to cover, certainly. I'm going to go like 23-14 victory for the Scarlet Knights. 9-point win. There you go.
Would this be a signature win?
Yes, it would be a signature win. It would be, and this is the question, would it be top 10 Rutgers win all time?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I have to look at the list. Let me tell you something. The list ain't great. I'm just going to tell you right now. We've done this list before. You get to like 6 or 7. You're like, oh, they beat Arkansas when they're in the SEC. Like there's really not. It's not a fantastic list.
Well, I'll list some off the top of my head. 1869, Princeton, national championship game winning. 2006, Louisville, obviously.
Of course. Yes.
2007, South Florida. Right.
Yes. Yep.
Number 2 in the country.
Yep. Of course. Yep. They beat Tennessee at Tennessee. That was the famous "What Are Rutgers" game. Yep.
There you go.
That was on the list.
They almost beat Penn State. That counts as a win to me in 1989 or whatever.
It's not a win. Come on.
They almost beat Alabama at the Meadowlands. That's another almost win. They almost beat Bear Bryant. That's practically a win.
Come on.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, you were right. I got to the 07 South Florida game, and then I kind of run out of steam after that. So
right, yeah. I mean, it's funny because we're like USF. It's tough, man. I mean, when they beat Cincinnati to get that comes up a lot. The 44-9 win over Cincinnati in 2005 to get bowl eligible. The Texas Bowl, when they stomped the bad Kansas State team. I don't know.
What was the game they won before 2012, before Louisville in 2012 to clinch a share of the league title? Whatever game that was.
Beat. Good question.
This is
they
great.
Lost to Pittsburgh, right? This is great. I don't remember.
Let's let the fans have the debate in the comments or whatever.
They're going to yell at us for this. We're going to have 1,000 comments for not preparing for this segment better. But the point being, I mean, I'm sure someone's going to say, you forgot about 1960. Colgate came to New Brunswick. I mean, I'm sure there's something that we're missing, but I just tell you, the list ain't great. I don't know if it's top 10, but it's certainly a signature win over a big name program. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That's the fun part about it. We'll be there Friday night. You'll be there Friday night. And we'll be back on Monday to talk all about it. So thanks for listening to the rant.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at nj.com/insider.